So today I want to do a quick first look, first impression / review of the Procreate for public beta that's been released about 3 days ago now, or 2.5 days ago. And I want to just quickly tell you what it is exactly, how to get it, if you should get it, and what has changed in Procreate 4. This might get a little bit of a long video. I hope that's okay. Let's get started. So first things first, how do you get Procreate 4 public beta? The way you do this, first of all, you will need to install iOS 11 beta. And iOS 11 basically introduces drag and drop features, but the beta version still has some battery issues, so you will have some problems. And obviously, since it's a beta release, there are still bugs on there, and if you use your iPad for work or you just rely on it heavily, you should not update a beta version on like a main device. So this is just for, I own my iPad just for fun, so I'm all right with that. You'll have to install iOS 11 beta, and then you have to sign up for Procreate for public beta. So you will not instantly get access to the public beta. You will have to get an invite to an app called Test Flight, and then you'll be able to download the beta version. And what is the beta version is basically it's a almost finished version of Procreate 4, but it still has some bugs and problems. And the main idea of beta testing is that you test it, you play with it, and you report your problems. And the way it's done in Procreate is there's in the Procreate forum, there's official board for public beta, and you basically report all of your bugs in here and the team will get back to it. And so far we are on beta release number 3 now, so they are very fast at implementing changes. So a lot of people who saw that I got the beta asked me if they should update to the beta, and I usually say get the beta if you like hunting bugs. I really like finding problems and try and really seeing how it is basically developed while you're helping at making it better. But if you are frustrated with an app that might crash randomly or stuff is a little bit wonky sometimes, you will not really enjoy this. So be aware that this is a beta update and that it is not stable yet. The aim is to make it stable so it gets better once it's publicly released. So let's have a look at Procreate number 4. And right when you get in there, you can see they did some beautiful little design changes. You get rounded corners, which is in line with the new iOS 11. You have now a select option, so you can select multiple app artworks like in the Photos app. It does not work with the slide select, which is also something that I wish would come. And then what they changed is that import will now open the new Files app, and let's go cancel that, and Photo will open the Photos app. And also it will support drag and drop. I'm not going to do that right now, otherwise it will take forever, but I'll show you drag and drop a little later. You still have the plus sign. You can create custom canvases and go with the default sizes as well. So let's create a new document. And it looks similar, but not exactly the same. They did some small redesigns on the icons, which look great. And they also have, if you tap a layer, the little layer menu has changed. Now you have alpha lock as an actual setting, which is nice because oftentimes when I told people to alpha lock, they didn't know that they have to slide with 2 fingers. Also, still the same with reference, etc. What's new is the mask option, which is basically creating a new mask underneath. And if you've worked with Photoshop before, you will know that a mask will basically a non-destructive way of removing things. So instead of erasing the actual artwork, I'm just hiding it with a mask, which is great if you're actually painting and you painted something and you're not sure if you might still use it at a later point or not. So layer masks is a very nice new feature. And then you have the new smudge tool, which is amazing. You can just, let me go, just draw something. And the new smudge tool will now actually mix colors. So let me go and choose a new wet brush, like the oil paint. It really mixes now and it looks beautiful. And I imagine this extremely cool for people who are more traditionally, create more traditional types of artwork. This is really, really nice. From a lettering perspective, which is what I'm most interested in, they changed some things. They created actually a new calligraphy set, which I want to talk about in a second. But first I want to talk about the general drag and drop. So I'm going to explain it based on importing, for example, a palette, because I have not done that yet. So the way you use drag and drop now is you slide up, not that much that it goes into the app view, but just slide up so the dock appears. And then there's this new app, which is the Files app. And this basically has all of your files. Also different clouds, if you use different clouds. Let me go back to Procreate. So you have that, and if you hold it for quite a long time, you are actually able to drop it as an overlay kind of thing, and you can move it over here if you want. And now you can actually import stuff via drag and drop. So let me find a palette. So I have a palette here, and I just drag it into place, and it is now imported. And the same thing works for brushes as well. So let me go. This is the new brush view. Let me go. This is a new set that I created. You have to slide up to reveal the new set right now, and then tap it and it will create a new set. Let me just delete that really quickly. So I created a new set, which is called Blah. And then if you want to do a mass import, which is one of the coolest new features ever, you go into the thing and select, and you can actually drag over it and drag it into. And I was extremely excited about this, but it only works in the Files app in iCloud right now, or if it's on your device. I usually store all of my brushes in Dropbox. I am not able to import via drag and drop into Dropbox just yet. I assume that it might happen once the Dropbox app has updated to the iOS 11 version, or if it has to be implemented by Apple or Procreate. I don't know yet, but it works with iCloud, so I moved all of my brushes to iCloud. And this is extremely cool if you have tons of brushes like me. I have around 500 brushes to import, so this is a time saver. One of the things I don't like about this new whole brush view is actually moving brushes into other sets though. So let me just go and get rid of that. So what you can do is you can select multiple brushes at once now, which is also new, I believe. You can delete all of them by using the minus up here. I did not find that the first time, but it is up here. It's the same thing as with deleting multiple layers. It's just on the left. And then if you want to move all of those brushes, you cannot just go and take it. You cannot just take it, put it on here, and it will jump into that folder how it was before, which is a way I really, really like. It is a little bit more time consuming. So you actually select all of the brushes that you want. And there's two ways. You can actually hold it on the name and wait for this to open up, and then you can drop it. I'm not going to do that right now because I'm just leaving it. The other way that's a little bit faster, but still a little bit inconvenient because you have to use both hands for this, is you lift up the brushes like that, and then tap with your hand the name of the new brush that you want, and then you can drop it. And I'm just going to go and delete all of those because my order is ruined otherwise. And that's how that works. Other than that, I like the fact that the sets are now easier to scroll, and it's easier to like move all the way to the end or all the way to the top, because you don't get those little stops that happened when you wanted to move sets out of the current view in version 3, which is a problem that I had a lot. So that's how the new brush panel looks. They have new brushes, a new brush set, which is a calligraphy set, which really is targeted towards iPad lettering, I would say, which is great. And they actually adjusted it after I did some feedback on it, which is also great. Because if you've talked to me about iPad lettering with default brushes, I will have told you that you have to remove the start taper that basically all of the lettering related brushes have in Procreate. And I told them in the forum that that was a problem to create a letter like U. Let me just go and apply a little bit of start taper for you to see that. So if I go and apply a start taper in size here, it will create this little tip that is not wanted in lettering. And I just let them know that that was not a good thing, and they actually removed it in the next beta release, so that's a great thing. So now the lettering brushes all come without a start taper. And they have some new brushes like the script brush, which is a round calligraphy brush. It is a little bit fuzzy because it uses a slightly blurred shape. So it is not as sharp as I usually prefer my brushes, but it works. This is the shale brush, which I think is probably my new favorite, which is a really fun kind of grungy brush and that has some texture to it. Has a really fun shape. The water pen, I would say, is not really a lettering brush, but because it's a wet mixing brush, and I talk about that in a second. I think this is better to add texture than to actually letter with, because it is a little bit too textured for my taste to letter. Same as the blotchy brush as well. I think that it works for lettering, but it probably looks better to add some textures. They did a streaker brush, which is really cool because if you've been around for a bit, you know that streaker brushes have been all the rage a few months back. And basically everyone who made lettering brushes made a streaker brush, and we're all extremely excited about streaker brushes. And I love the fact that they actually added one. So in case you did not download one, you'll have one in a default set now. They also created a chalk brush, which is a little bit more textured than my own chalk brush, but I think it looks actually really good. This makes me happy. And then finally, a monoline brush. I think everybody has been waiting for a monoline brush. Is that I usually use my monoline brush to erase, and I like to erase large areas. So if I go and actually use the monoline brush at the biggest settings, that's how big it gets. It does not get bigger, so I had to create a new brush. I actually create a wonderful brush which is called Big Ass Round, and it basically is a brush that has quite some spacing applied to it in the shape, so you can actually go really high with it and it will cover the whole area, which is great if you're like me and too lazy to go in clear layers. You can actually just erase them all in one go. Okay, so the new brushes for calligraphy are great. They work for lettering now since the start taper has been removed. I'm very happy that they did this because the iPad lettering community is quite big, and I think that we didn't really get a lot of options with the default brushes before. So this makes me really happy. Now let's look at maybe the different brush settings. So I got the beta mostly just to test all of my brushes and see if they would work. I had a few problems with my streaker brushes. They did not work by default, but now they have been fixed. So that problem has been addressed and I can now use them. So far, I haven't really had any problems with my brushes to change it, so that's a very good thing. So the transition shouldn't be too hard. Now, let's have a look at this wet brush that I created, which I'm actually quite excited about. because it's a lot of fun to letter with. So the panels have changed a little bit. So the spelling in Streamline is different now, which is a weird little detail, but I actually think it's funny. So the fall off has changed position. So fall off used to be in a dynamic setting, if I remember correctly, but it is now in the stroke properties, and fall off is just that the brush will run out of ink. Taper is still here, so all we got here is a new spelling of Streamline and the fall off in the stroke panel. The shape panel looks the same as before. The grain looks the same as well, so that hasn't changed. Pencil has also not changed, except that we have a new feature which is called bleed. And bleed is really cool because it will basically give you an actual bleediness in the in results. So it will, in a round brush, it will give you just a little bit of texture on the edges, and it will increase the opacity of it, because a bleeding ink basically seeps into paper. So that is done really nicely. I like the new bleed feature. And then we have the tilt. As before, the source tab has changed. So now the invert shape is actually a button, because it used to be just tapping with 2 fingers, which still works, but a lot of people didn't know that. So I like the fact that they added an invert shape. What has not been implemented yet is pasting the shape from your clipboard. That should come, hopefully, but right now you cannot insert from the clipboard, which I hope comes really soon, because I use that all the time. You can swap it from the Pro library, so the Pro library is the same. It has a few new shapes because we have new brushes. I also like the fact that it's now a little bit bigger, so you can see the shapes better. And insert photo, just to import from your photo library. Same from the grain source, and they are now underneath each other instead of next to each other. So the design here changed a little bit. In the general tab changed as well. You have a brush name property here, and you can actually change the preview. You used to be able to do the stamp preview before, but you can now also set the size of it, which I like a lot, because I oftentimes will use my brush at quite a small size, but have a brush that can go really big. So I will work with max sizes, and sometimes the preview is just something like super blown up. I don't really see the line, how it would look. So I like the fact that we can change that. Then the orient to screen is the same as before. So it will just not rotate your shape. If it's not a round shape, you will notice a difference. Then new is that you get a multiply, so you get the blend modes for brushes, which is something that has been around in Photoshop for a while, but it has not been in Procreate before, and I quite like it. I have not experimented too much with brush creation yet, but I see that this might be really cool for some effects. Then there's the smudge slider, and I didn't know what this was for, but I assume by now that this will actually affect the brush only if it is used in the smudge tool. So how much will it smudge? How much of the pixels will it actually move around when it is set as a smudge in the smudge tool? So this should not affect the brush itself in the brush making, in the writing or lettering or drawing tool. And then there's the size and opacity limits. They are the same than before. Pencil we talked about. Dynamics is the last one. So dynamics has changed quite significantly, because now you have basically 3 different options for brushes. So you can have a normal brush, and you have the dynamic settings in each of these little tabs. So you have opacity and size dynamics, which will be applied depending how far you move, how much you move your brush with speed. So there's just the normal one, and then there's glaze, which we had before. Before, you just tap the glazed tool, and then accumulative and flow would be available to you. So glaze is just transparency. So I've talked about all of this before. You can see my brush making guide for that. And now what's new is the wet mix, and wet mix is really cool. That's the effect that I've shown you before with, I think the oil paint is one of my favorite wet brushes. It's really it looks much more realistic because it picks up the color basically. So you have dilution, so how much water is in there, how opaque is it. Charge is how much paint you actually have on your brush, and pull is how much of the underlying pixels are basically pulled. And you can create some really cool effects with this. So I really like this new wet mix kind of brush, and obviously the smudge tool just gets a lot better with that as well. It just looks a lot more realistic. That's probably the biggest changes. Just some small details that I noticed and that I really, really like, I want to point out. One of them is the brush cursor. I'm really happy about the brush cursor. I'm someone that uses the brush cursor because I want to see where my brush is. And if you had the brush cursor turned on in Procreate 3, once you would use it, the cursor would actually get gray. And this annoyed me a little bit, but now we just have the outline, and I feel like it makes the user experience so much better. So I really like this little detail that the brush cursor does no longer change color when you use it. There's just some very nice little animations, like when you open up the layer modes, it just looks very pretty. Like these little animations, I really like them. What's also really cool is the screen recording has some issues. I cannot record something that's longer than a minute right now and export it, but I've been told that's an iOS issue, not a Procreate issue. But what was a problem before, that is also an iOS issue and not a Procreate issue, is that this little pop-up menu would not show up in screen recordings in Procreate 3, which is quite a big problem if you're trying to film a tutorial via screen recording. I've been able to record just a few second videos, and this does now show up in videos, which is great, so we can use that. What's also new is the combine down feature and merge down. Combine down will basically just create a group for you, which I think is not a bad thing. I was expecting something else. I was expecting it to merge the layers but keep layer modes intact, which is something that I wish would work, because right now if you have a layer mode applied and do merge down, the layer mode will basically be set to normal in a merging state, and you have to group them to keep the layer mode. So I was expecting that to happen. Not sure if that is possible, but that's what I expected. Other than that, the share is new, and I really like how it is new. You can now export DTIFF format. I think that's new. You can also import DTIFF format, if I remember correctly. But what's also the best thing is that you can actually choose the format right at the share moment. So if you just keep it open, it actually saves you a tab. So that's quite nice. You can insert photos. You can now take a photo, which is new, I believe. Then the same thing. I don't think this has changed. Yeah, I think the rest is the same. Oh, AirPlay canvas is new. So if you have an AirPlay device, you can now AirPlay just a canvas onto that onto another screen. If you're a PC user like me, you can't really use that. The rest is just the same as before, like the pressure curve, which I still have not set, but I'll do that. Then these are new, I believe. The color balance. Is the color balance new? I don't remember. Yeah, the design is new from color balance, and the tone curve as well, I believe. These look different, a little bit different. I quite like how they look. I don't use them as often as I wish I would. But that's basically like the first look that I wanted to talk about. All in all, I am very happy with the changes. I really like the drag and drop features. I just wish moving brushes from one set to another would be easier. I feel like it's a gimmicky thing to have to use two brushes or just wait forever. I'm really wishing that the video export works very soon. Other than that, I'm really happy with all the changes they did. I love the little attention to detail that they have. So all these little animations and the rounded corners. It's a beautiful app. And apart from like deleting, I was able to find everything on first try. No, I was not able to find everything on first try. I did not realize drag and drop worked just with the Files app. I took about an hour trying to fix it with Dropbox, but it's out of my control. Yeah, so that's all of my little rambling done. I hope this gave you a good idea of how Procreate looks. I hope you're excited for a few brushes. I know I am. And yeah, if you have questions, leave them in the comments. And if you test the beta, let me know your opinions. Okay, bye.